Welcome everyone to our show and thank you for tuning in. I'm Choi Sheina.
And I'm Janet Miranda. We're your hosts of Motivations.
Each episode of our show, we have a specific theme for our audience. In today's program, we're here to discuss prevention and self-care.
According to the Journal of Medical Care, inadequate health literacy is associated with lower use of preventative health services. This indicates that with the right information, many physical illnesses and mental disturbances can be avoided with education and positive lifestyle choices.
In this episode, we address self-care behaviors that can have a radically positive impact on our overall health.
We here at Motivations believe that maintaining a healthy mindset, eating well, and getting regular exercise makes the body a vehicle for living a stable, happy life.
According to the American Psychological Association, stress keeps more than 40% of adults awake at night when they ought to be sleeping. That is an alarming amount of our population whose wheels cannot stop turning.
So this is telling us that something vital needs to be adjusted to help align ourselves better. We can all benefit from learning how to handle stress so it moves through us and doesn't get trapped in our bodies and minds.
Yes, self-care is a process where individuals maintain health through positive promoting behaviors. This is all about taking actions that support our overall well-being through physical, mental, and emotional stability.
Some examples of self-care is to go for a walk by ourselves, practice meditation, create a healthy meal, and socialize with uplifting-minded people. According to an article on a digital platform, millions of young people transforming their communities, approximately 91% of women are unhappy with their bodies and resort to dieting to achieve their ideal body shape, as only 5% of women actually possess the body type that's often portrayed in the media. They also write that 50% of college-age girls feel pressure to be a certain weight.
Prevention just doesn't stop there. We must educate ourselves early on. According to the Center on Addiction, 90% of smokers, drinkers, and drug abusers began using these substances before age 18.
That's a powerful indicator of where our attention as a society needs to redirect and shift our focus. We have the power to help make a change in our society by first starting with ourselves.
We here at Motivations believe in taking responsibility for our own happiness. The power to feel good is in our own hands.
That's exactly why I'm so excited about today's guest. Motivations is all about providing information and tools that can improve the lives of our viewers.
On today's show, our guests will give you some insight on how to strengthen self-esteem, manage stress and anxiety naturally, and resist social pressures.
So let's introduce our first guest now. She's an educator at New York's only woman-owned medical marijuana dispensary. Her mission is to improve the quality of life for patients in New York by providing access to the highest quality pharmaceutical-grade medical marijuana treatments available. She's committed to research, discovery, and advocacy in pursuit of healthy solutions for diseases, conditions, and the management of debilitating symptoms for patients everywhere. She has over 16 years of experience practicing in specialty pharmacies focused on HIV and infectious diseases, oncology, transplants, compounding, and fertility. She received her degree from Long Island University College of Pharmacy and served as the pharmacist in charge and manager of a specialty pharmacy counseling patients with complex drug regimens. Through her extensive experience as a pharmacist, she brings strong competencies as a pharmacy manager and patient counselor. She prides herself on the ability to interact with patients and believes in the importance of both high-quality medicine and committed counseling in providing compassionate care to the patients of New York State. Please give a warm welcome to Sang Choi.
Welcome everyone, I'm Choi Sheina and I have the pleasure today to sit down with pharmacist and dispensary director Sang Choi. Sang, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit today about what it is you do. I'm excited about these herbal, natural remedies to fix some of the ailments that our society is going through today.
So yes, I am a pharmacist and I am the downstate dispensary director for one of the registered organizations here in New York. We are actually a women-owned company. It's a mom and two daughters, and we have a grow facility where we manufacture the medications and also for dispensaries across the state of New York.
So this is a new thing, and it's just opening up. Some people don't even know that it's going towards legalization of medical marijuana.
Right.
So how does that look in the next year, year and a half for New York State and maybe the country?
Sure. So, in 2016, the first dispensaries opened in the state of New York. So now it's almost 4 years in, and now we have about 40. The number has doubled from 20 to 40. I do think that legalization or adult use in New York is coming our way. I would say probably within the next 6 months to a year. There is a huge driving force to make it legal in most of the country. So there's about 33 states that have medical marijuana, and there's 11 states that have recreational plus DC.
So who can get a card? Who can become a patient of the state of New York?
Sure, in New York, there are 13 qualifying conditions. In addition to that, you have to have 2 additional secondary qualifying conditions to be able to get a card. So once you see a practitioner who can certify you for a card, then you can come visit the dispensary, where New York is probably one or two of the states that actually have a pharmacist-led dispensary, where other states really don't have that.
What kind of things, though? Like, is it pain? Is it a mind thing? Is it a mind-body thing? How can this plant help? There's a lot of stigma against marijuana as a drug, or that you're going to go kind of bananas and you're going to be paranoid.
Yeah.
How does the different types of the plant, species of the plant work? And
so, it's an amazing plant. It has about 480 compounds. There's about 60 that are active that we know about. There is research going on all the time about it. But the ones we know about right now, which is the most abundantly available cannabinoids, are THC and CBD. So in the New York program, we take those 2 cannabinoids and we manipulate the ratios to give you the relief that you need. So I'm seeing patients, something like chronic pain caused by, let's say, arthritis and things like that. But I'm also seeing patients with Parkinson's and ALS, and just opioid use is also a qualifying condition in the state of New York, such as PTSD. There's a bunch.
So I'm really interested in the opioid epidemic. It seems like this is ruining lives. It seems like it is damaging our young men throughout the entire country, throughout all of North America. Explain to me how this can be applied as a therapy to wean off of the opioids that people are on.
Sure. The numbers are pretty astounding. Since 1999 till 2017, there's been about 700,000 overdose deaths in the United States. It has grown 6-fold from 1999 to 2017. There were about 70,000 deaths just, with overdoses in in the U.S. That is the highest amount of patients that have ever died due to heroin overdose or synthetic opioids like fentanyl.
Yeah, and they're getting those drugs from doctors, right? The prescription drugs.
Some of them, sure.
So how would someone treat? Like, does your physician recommend how to wean off of one and onto another, or do they work within stages?
So for New York, what happens is the practitioner will say, I think you have a need for cannabis or medical marijuana because you are maxed out on your opioid doses and it's really detrimental to your health. So when the patients come in, I just go over the different ratios, the high THC product, the low THC, the high CBD, things like that, just so that we make it usable for people who can use it during the day, and nighttime would be a different dosage. So we do see a decrease in patients coming off of opioids. You might be able to decrease the dose by half or come off of it completely.
All right. And so what's interesting about this is we've talked about the stigma. As an educator, where do you go? How do you explain to people to get that idea of that this is an illegal drug? As that shifts in public consciousness, what are the things you focus on to share with the research you found?
Sure. Most of my job is to really consult patients on the usage of medical marijuana, but the other part that I do is really go out and educate. I think education is very, very important. I think for most people, if you put it in a very scientific manner, so let's say I say to you, we all have a nervous system, we have a cardiovascular system. Now, cannabis works on the endocannabinoid system. It is a system that all mammals with a backbone possess. We also make our own substances like THC in our own bodies.
Endogenously.
Endogenously we make them. So if you're running and you feel really good, that's sort of our endocannabinoid system getting stimulated. So, sorry, I lost it. What was the question?
So as far as you know, what angles do you focus on in your education?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so education is key. So that's what I normally do. I'll go out and talk about it in a scientific term. If I say THC and CBD do this on a scientific level in your body, I think people get a better understanding of how something like this can work.
Yeah.
So.
As far as I know that when I went to visit my parents, my dad plays a ton of tennis, my mom does a ton of yoga. My dad is 70, my mom is 63, and I'm trying to get them to use CBD. And I know you've joked around with your parents too, but how do you educate that generation who is habituated to alcohol as a way to relax and that marijuana is bad? What kind of things do you focus on?
So I would say initially when the program started, I was not seeing anybody from the senior population. It was a very, very small amount. Now, 4 years into the program, I would say a good percentage of our patients, maybe 30–40%, are the senior population. So we talk about sort of how this works in the body, just theoretically and scientifically how this affects you and how it can help you decrease pain or your anxiety.
So they listen to your talk and then they become a little open to it?
Yeah, I think it's just really stating facts, saying this is how it works in your body. There is a lot of stigma attached to it, obviously, because of years and years of, talking about it in the wrong way, but it definitely has medical benefits. I mean, even my own mother wasn't able to tell her friends what I did for a living for a very long time. She said, "Oh, you do what? What are you doing? You talk about marijuana?" I'm like, "Yes." And then so basically, I had to sit her down one day and tell her what THC is and what CBD is, and how this can help. Now she tells her friends that they should get a medical marijuana card.
Where do you see this going from a business perspective? How does this open up? You were talking with me one day about the people that are in jail for all of these crimes that are now, once it's legal, like how does this shift in society?
Yeah, so just a few days ago, there was a bill signed by the Judiciary Committee. It's called the MORE Act, which is the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment Expungement Act. So what that's going to allow for is, if it goes to the House, it's going to allow for decriminalization and descheduling of cannabis. It's going to also expunge, some records for people who have been in jail for cannabis, not all cannabis use, but certain cannabis crimes, and allows for opportunity for people who have been impacted by the war on drugs.
Yeah, I've been reading a little bit in the New York Times and a few other magazines about the dangers of vaping, and there's all kinds of illegal compounds that are added to things that people buy on the street or from dealers that are not dispensaries. So is that something we should watch out for? Is there a way to make that safer with the vaping? What are your thoughts on the...
So the report has come out that most of it is illegal THC vapes.
Okay.
And what they contain is something called vitamin E acetate. That was the common denominator found in these vapes that were making people sick. So it looks very much like cannabis oil. It's a little dark, it's a little yellow. So what they're using that is the filler to make the cannabis THC vaporizers look like it's all THC. The medical program, especially in the state of New York, is a highly regulated program. So it's tested for contaminants, pesticides, heavy metals, fungus, and potency. So no vape in the state of New York, or at least in the medical marijuana program, has caused anybody any harm.
And how do you guys see the range of what you're doing down the line? Like, is this going to have more businesses open like they have in Amsterdam, or
Well, I mean, that
like, will it be like a bar where you could go in and just get...
We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's hard to say, but I'm sure there will be a lot of business opportunities for people who have been affected by war on drugs. There are a lot of investment opportunities for them, I think.
So is there anything else you want to add about the therapeutic application of this plant to heal specific sort of ailments or conditions? Like, where do you see it as the most useful tool in our society right now?
I have seen a lot of patients with chronic pain. It can
Okay.
be anything. It can be ranging from arthritis to back pain to back surgeries that have gone bad and things like that. So to me, I've seen great success in those patients. We talk about CBD and THC a lot. We talk about, hemp CBD versus cannabis CBD. So there's a difference there too, where hemp CBD has less than 0.3% THC. So you
Okay.
can buy those things over the counter, but again, you have to be careful of those products as well. Make sure those have been tested for quality and potency, and that they're free of pesticides.
Right. So Sung, I'm really interested in breaking down CBD, THC, what each does, and how they are applied in combination therapy, in isolation, and what you do with the ratios.
Sure. So THC is the psychoactive part of the plant, which means it could cause a high, but it works actually on receptors. We have receptors in our brain called CB1, and we have CB2 receptors that THC affects all through our bodies, especially in our immune system, organs, other parts of the body. So what it does is it actually goes and sits in these receptors. We can think of it as a lock and key kind of system. So once it goes and sits in the receptors, it gives us effects that you want it to give. So THC's primary job is to help you sleep, help you relax, and help you eat. So it's very important in certain medical conditions. Let's say someone's going through cancer treatment and they're dealing with a lot of nausea and a lack of appetite. This would be very helpful to them. Now CBD is the other part of the plant, cannabidiol, which is non-psychoactive. So that works a little bit differently. It actually inhibits an enzyme in our body that breaks our own body's endogenous cannabinoids. So it keeps it in our bodies a little bit longer. So you could think of it as like, let's say, Zoloft or an SSRI, that keeps the serotonin in our bodies a little bit longer. CBD keeps our own cannabinoids in our bodies there a little bit longer. So primary effect of that is to help you with anti-inflammatory effects. It helps with muscle relaxation effects.
Healing, recovery.
Yes, and also anti-anxiety effects. I mean, THC also helps to decrease anxiety. So it's really helpful in our PTSD patients as well.
Okay.
So if they are sleeping at night and they, that time of the night where you start to get those nightmares just replaying every night, THC is very important for to be able to sleep throughout the night, because it does actually shorten the REM cycle a little bit so that you don't dream as often and as much, decreasing the nightmares.
How do you guys decide on the ratios for certain people, combining the ratios?
Good question. So a lot of the times when a patient comes to see me, I will ask them about their cannabis experience. So when someone says to me, I did in the 60s, that's not really a whole lot of experience right now. That would kind of dictate what I would recommend for the patient. Now, if someone is using it on a daily basis, that means the patient's tolerance is a little bit higher, so we can go a little bit higher in the dosing. So if someone comes in and tells me, listen, I have chronic pain, I have arthritis, I have never used cannabis in my entire life, then we might start with a high CBD product. So the way we have it in our dispensaries is that we have THC and CBD, but in different ratios. So we have a ratio that's a 1:20 ratio. That just means it has 1 part of THC, 20 parts of CBD, so it's primarily CBD, non-psychoactive. And then you have a 2:1 high CBD, which one has two parts of CBD to 1 part THC. So basically has a little bit more THC in it. The CBD level doesn't change from the 1:20. Then you have something called a balance, which is a combination of THC and CBD together in equal amounts. And then you have our high THC product, which is a 20:1 ratio. We always put CBD and THC together, even if it's like different amounts, because there's also something called the entourage effect. So the entourage effect is that you need a lot of different parts of the plant for that one cannabinoid to stand out and work better. So it's like a family. So you can't just have that one isolate and it wouldn't work as well.
Okay. So where do you go as an educator to spread the good word about the plant? Like what kind of places do you hit?
So initially when I started working for Etain, no one wanted to know anything about it. Everybody was really scared, and I would mention cannabis or medical marijuana, I'd be shut down right away. But then you had a group of people who were very interested in learning what this plant can do. So I basically go anywhere someone will ask me to come. I go to doctor's offices, I go to conferences, I just go to different places to educate.
Yeah, what I'm interested in is the capacity for enhanced cognition and neuromuscular coordination. I know I'm an athletic trainer and a yoga teacher, a mindfulness teacher, and I think it turns on certain ways of communicating with the mind and body. I know a lot of MMA guys, a lot of professional weightlifters are starting to use it. What about that side of the plant to enhance actual human performance and cognition?
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. The fact that, we know CBD is used as an anti-inflammatory, anti-spasmodic, also works as an antioxidant. So, of course, after your workout, if you started using some CBDs, it would help your recovery. So I think definitely there is a connection there.
Yeah. Is there any danger of nuking my short-term memory, or is that a myth? Let's talk about how this affects your brain and your memory.
So it is not a myth.
Okay.
So THC especially will give you, you will get short-term memory loss.
Okay.
So in the moment that you're using THC, you won't really be able to form new memories and you won't be able to remember certain things. But after those effects go away, then of course it'll be back to your normal self.
Yeah. Some of the smartest people I know, though, on the planet use it regularly.
Yeah.
So I guess in the short term, you have to watch out. Like when you're on it, you may not remember what's going on, every detail of what's going on.
Right, and that's why we can use different products based on your need. So we have a vaporizer here in New York. It's just a pre-filled cartridge with the extract in there. So we know it works really quickly. It takes about 5 minutes to work and has a duration of 2 hours because we know that the lungs are very bioavailable, which means that anything you put into your lungs is absorbed directly into the bloodstream and directly into the central nervous system, sitting in those receptors, and that's why you feel the effects of it right away. So now you can use that to your advantage. So let's say I'm in pain right now or I need this right now, you can manipulate the time. So it's very controllable in this sense. You know that in 2 hours, the effects will go away. Then you can go on with your day, whatever you need to do. Also comes in tinctures, drops you put right under the tongue. We have sprays that you put under the tongue. Also, we have a powder that you can mix into anything you drink. And we have capsules as well.
I heard that when you do an edible, the process it goes through in the liver makes it a lot strong. It amplifies the effect.
Correct.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So just to get a little scientific for a second, it's once you ingest it, it starts as delta-9 THC.
Okay.
So now it goes through the process of getting digested, goes into the liver to get metabolized. It turns into a different metabolite called 11-hydroxy THC, which is 5 times stronger than delta-9 THC. So that's why everyone always says, oh, be really careful
when you have an edible.
edibles. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's been a very informative session with you. Thank you so much, Sun, for sitting down with us and giving us all these tools and thoughts for our audience. We're so happy that you've come here with us. You can check us out on motivations.com, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more exciting guests on our show. Thank you, Sun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Although it may be increasingly difficult to escape the pressures and influences of social media, our next guest is a licensed mental health counselor who works with women struggling with their body image and life transitions. She teaches them to focus on solutions and to consciously work through thoughts and behaviors that normally keeps them stuck. She gives her clients the tools and resources that can help to manage life in a healthy, productive, and successful way. She specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance, commitment therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, solution-focused therapy, and mindfulness practices. A graduate of Touro College and Adams State University, she's licensed in both New York and Florida, offering tips on cultivating confidence and reducing anxiety, self-neglect, and negative body image. Her clients learn skills for developing positive self-talk and deepening self-perception. Here with some valuable tips and advice on how to reduce those high levels of stress and anxiety of the perfect body image, let us welcome Sheina Schochet.
Welcome everyone, I'm Janet Miranda and I have the pleasure to sit down with licensed mental health counselor Sheina Schochet. Hi Sheina.
Hi Janet, thanks for having me.
So good to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Tell the world what it is that you do.
So I'm a licensed mental health counselor and I work primarily with high functioning women, which I've come to notice that when I use that term with the general public, they misinterpret what high functioning means.
Tell me what you mean by that.
In the mental health world, when we say high functioning, we're referring to the average person who doesn't have any major issues, like no major depression, no personality disorders. They're the average person you're friends with, you see, that has something going on in their lives that's preventing them from living to the fullest or feeling their best. But they're going about day-to-day life. They're able to work. They're able to have relationships. They're able to function. So they're not impeded in any major way. So that's what we mean by high functioning, as opposed to someone who, you know, can't hold a job because they get major panic attacks all the time, and or they can't be in a relationship because they have major trauma. So that would be a little bit more of an extreme case. The women that I work with, they're typically, you know, the everyday woman who's going through life but has specific areas she's struggling in.
Wow. So when we talked a little bit on the phone before we brought you on here, we talked about some of those types of struggles. Do you have specific focused areas that you wanted to chat about today?
Sure. So one of the major areas I work with is women going through life transitions. So that's where their stage of life is changing. Maybe they're getting a new job, or they're in a new relationship, or they just moved. A lot of my clients here in New York, they're people who've moved from out of state, and they're not used to the hustle and bustle of New York life. They're not used to being in a new place without their support systems from their home, etc. And it also comes up if you're in a new relationship, new job, if you become a mom. A lot of women have issues in many areas when they become a mom, adjusting to their new responsibilities, to the new stressors, and having to maintain their job and relationships while going through all those new changes in their lives can lead to burnout for them. And so a lot of women come in with that, and a lot of women also come in struggling with body image, which is almost impossible to not have any issues with nowadays with diet culture and the media, etc.
Yeah, I mean, on the diet and the body image situation, with social media blasting through everyone's phones, that's kind of tense to have to deal with on a day-to-day.
Yeah, it is. And actually studies show that with social media, it has more of an effect on us than if we see a magazine or billboards or TV, because when we watch someone on TV, when we see a celebrity or we see a magazine, we consciously know that there's a whole team of people that go into making them look the way that they look. And so even though we still might be affected by it, a part of us is it's easier to make that distinguished difference, that it's not reality, because you know they have this whole team of people behind them. Whereas when you're looking on social media and you see your cousin or your friend or someone, your friend's friend, you know they're a real person. You know they likely don't have a whole team that's touching them up. So even though part of you realizes that maybe they have a filter on and they're in tune to their best angles, so they're turning around, etc., your brain still knows this is a real person, this is a picture, and it sometimes makes you feel worse about yourself than when you're looking at a magazine or watching a movie.
Well, I definitely want to chat about the burnout, but first, on this issue, what can women do? I mean, when they're struggling with this kind of situation where they're looking at these women who have either, you know, the filters, as you said, or Photoshop, or they're just born looking very gorgeous and perfect. I mean, what does the normal, average, high-functioning woman do? Does she sign herself up for, like, tons of, like, phys ed classes, or what does the person do to manage that?
So first of all, their priority should be health. And there is a major movement called Health at Every Size, which basically talks about how size isn't necessarily an indicator of how healthy someone is or isn't. You can have someone larger who is healthier than someone who's smaller. And that's something that a lot of doctors are still behind on, where when someone comes in with a medical issue, a lot of times the first suggestion is, if you lost some weight, then. And a lot of therapists and other specialists in the mental who are working with people who are larger and are Health at Every Size advocates will say, ask your doctor, if I was in a thinner body that you think would be healthier for me, what tests would you do to determine what's wrong with me?
Wow. That in itself is just like a discussion that we have to have.
Yeah.
But how does that affect the youth? How does that affect the girls that are in high school that that could really be affected by something like this?
Yeah, so I've actually spoken at high schools about things like body image and it being affected by social media. So a couple strategies are to tune into the things you're grateful to your body for. Like you're grateful that you're able to run a marathon, or you're grateful for different tasks you could do. As a mom, I know that we are grateful that our bodies are able to create and sustain a life and then nurture that life.
Yes.
And when you're healthy, then you're able to do so many things for yourself, for the people you care about, for society as a whole, whereas if you were unhealthy, you can't do those things. So tune into the things that your healthy body affords you to do. And then also a big thing is to stop comparing yourself.
Big one.
Yes, and comparing yourself can go in two directions. You can up compare and you can down compare, and they each have advantages and disadvantages. So when you up compare yourself to someone who you think is better than you, then you are motivated to kind of look better, do better, be better, because you want to be like them. But then at the same time, you feel like you're not good enough, and it makes you get down on yourself. On the flip side, when you down compare yourself, it makes you feel better about yourself because you're like, I'm not as bad as they are, or I look better than they do. But then it also makes you feel like you don't need to make yourself a priority because you look better than other people. And it's not about, how you are in comparison to other people. It's about, am I healthy? Am I functioning at my best? So that ties into one of the therapies I like to use, acceptance and commitment therapy, which takes those two parts of, let's say, comparison and integrates the advantages of both. So you accept yourself as you are, not because you're better than other people, but just because this is who I am, and I'm going to accept myself. And then at the same time, you commit to work on growing in the areas that matter to you, that are aligned with your values. So you have to figure out, what are my values? If you're very unhappy with the way that you look, why is that? Is it because of pictures you're seeing and expectations from society, or is it because you know that you're unhealthy? If, let's say, you feel like you're a couch potato and you know that you would feel better if you moved a bit more, then find a way of movement that feels good to you. Maybe that's spin class, maybe that's Zumba, maybe it's going with a friend on a walk in the park every day. Something that feels good to you and helps you move closer to your values of being healthier, being more active, but not being motivated by looking a certain way or being affected by society's pressure to look a certain way.
I love that explanation, and thank you so much for that. I mean, our guests can certainly be served with this information, but tying that into the burnout, I can see how some women who have just had a baby, for example, and are transitioning in their life, have those body images, but then get burned out between work and baby, and then going to the gym and going to spin or whatever it is. So how do people deal with the burnout?
Right. So there's definitely many strategies, and same way with body image, there's always strategies that you can use to try to get better on your own. In some cases, if you feel like you're trying things out for a while and things still aren't improving, or you feel like you're not functioning your best in a certain area of your life, that's when people like me, a licensed therapist, can guide you and support you to help you move past that struggle, because that support is invaluable. And with burnout, some of the things to try to alleviate it are, first of all, setting boundaries and looking at your values and how can I set boundaries to make sure that I'm maintaining my values. So if you know that you need that time to decompress and you need that time to go work out, then you make sure to tell your husband or partner or get a nanny so that you can have that time to go and have your me time that's healthy for you. And sometimes we can't afford that, right? Some moms don't have extra help. So it's about figuring out the way that you can do that for you. And on that note, another big thing you can do for burnout is leaning into your social supports. So most of us do have social supports. Unfortunately, there are people who don't have much in life and feel like they don't have anyone they can count on. But there's always services you can turn to, like community resources that might help you. And yes, that might be a little bit uncomfortable if you're not used to reaching out for help, which a lot of us nowadays aren't, since we're raised to be independent and self-reliant. But if you know you're not functioning at your best, then you're not being the best for the other people in your life who you're trying to be there for. and then going that step to ask people who are willing to help you and willing to be there for you and willing to be a resource is the best thing you can do for yourself, for your family, for everyone around you.
But that's if you're burned out. But how do you figure out what are the signs of, oh man, I'm getting close to burnout? Like, how do you prevent getting there?
So it's a big thing is awareness, which is with mostly anything in life, and being in tune to yourself. So if you notice that you're dreading going to work and every time that the alarm clock rings in the morning, it's like a death sentence, then think, why is this? Am I overworked? Am I not enjoying my actual job? Are my relationships at work really draining me? And try to figure out what it is that is making you feel that way so that you can address it before it leads to the point where you have a full-on breakdown. If you see that you're yelling at people or getting on edge much quicker than you would like or not responding in the way you would hope, then think, what's going on? Am I overstretched? Am I doing too much? And then try again to focus on those boundaries and your values and integrating them so that you make sure to put time where it's important to you and that you also have time where you're not fully maxed out.
Thank you, Sheina. That was great. My quick question to you is, how do folks manage the community resource situation, going and getting other people to help them if they're high strung on their own ego? How does one who's very into themselves admit, going back to, I guess, your first thing is accepting.
Yeah.
Accepting that this is your circumstance, this is your life.
Yeah. Well, then again, it goes back to your values. So maybe a major value of yours is that I'm a self-reliant, independent woman or man, if, for all of the men watching this. And if that's a strong value for you, say which value is more important to me. Am I not being a good friend, or am I not being a great mom because I'm refusing to reach out for support when I know that if I did ask for help and get support, then I'd be much happier, I'd be a lot less stressed, my kids would benefit, my spouse would benefit, or my partner would benefit, and my job would benefit. So look at those values again. Is it more important to you that you have lesser quality of life and lesser quality relationships because you need to be that independent, self-reliant person? Or is it more important to you that life be a better quality, you have better relationships, and you're able to show up in your best way because you're leaning into supports who are more than willing to be there for you?
Oh, Sheina, that's just great. Thank you so much for that. But one other question that's really going to send us off into a new direction. For the moms out there that see burnout in their kids, because we see these kids going to high school, junior high school, they have so much homework, they look at the Instagram, they look at the body image, and they say, God, I got to get like this, I want to look like Beyonce, I want to look like J-Lo, I want to be able to sing, I want to dance, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they still want to include like extracurriculum activities, etc. So you've explained how a grown woman or a grown man can find, oh, I'm burned out because of this or because of that. But how does a child or a teenager identify with burnout? Or even so, how do their parents, what are some signs that the parents can identify in their child to say, oh, this looks like possibly my child is going to be burned out, so maybe I'm going to follow Sheina's techniques?
Right. So again, it goes back to awareness and communication. So in general, with mental health things, most people have some level of something, right? We all have some level of anxiety where we get nervous or we're overworked. We get a bit of a feeling of depression when things aren't going the way that we want. We sometimes feel feelings that we don't want to recognize or are scared to feel. So the question is, how predominant is that feeling, and is it interfering with your life? So before we diagnose people with a mental health illness, which in general, the focus of mental health counseling is looking at people holistically as a whole and seeing which areas they're lacking in. But for insurance purposes, when individuals do want to use insurance for therapy, they have to have a diagnostic code. And the way that we look at that is to say, okay, they're having these symptoms, but it also has to be interfering with their functioning in an area of life. So if a person is doing something and they are having healthy relationships, they're sleeping properly, they're eating properly, they're able to work, they're able to do everything in their life without being, stopped by this issue they're dealing with, then maybe they just have to kind of find something like a hobby that can help them de-stress a bit, but it's not as big of an issue. But for parents, if you notice that your kid is extremely irritable in a way they used to not be, which is normal with teens in different ways, but again, it goes back to communication. And if they're not sleeping, if they're not eating, if their grades are changing at school, if their social circles are changing, or they used to always be on the phone with their friend, or their friends used to always be coming to your house and now they're not. If you notice that there's some striking change in your child's life, communicate and see what's going on. And then see if it's something that the two of you can work on together to address based on strategies we discussed, other strategies you can find. And if that's not enough, then taking your kid to a professional who specializes in kids or teens is the great next step.
Sheina, this was awesome. Where can the world find you?
So my website is thriveandshinewellness.com. So it's kind of a spin on words of like rise and shine, thrive and shine. And my Instagram handle is Sheina Schochet, LMHC. I know the spelling's a little bit hard, but you can find that on Motivation's website and
Yes.
Instagram and YouTube channel. And yeah, you can also find me on some directories for therapists, but
And you've just had some publications you were written up in.
yeah, so I've been quoted in several articles from outlets like Allure, Elite Daily, Reader's Digest, NBC, speaking about things like body image, women being overworked, women having insecurities, etc.
I can't wait to read more about you, Sheina. Thank you so much
It was a
for
pleasure.
showing up in the
Thanks.
world this way, and for sitting down with us and giving us such informative tools and thoughts for our audience. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
For you at home that would like more information on Sheina Schochet, please go to motivationstv.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more exciting guests from our show. Thank you. Thanks again. Really excited to. Thank you for tuning in and watching our show.
Tune in on our next episode.
And if you missed any of our previous episodes, be sure to watch them on our YouTube channel.
Be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages and contact us today. We'd love to hear from you.
Like us on Facebook and tell us your thoughts on our show by giving us a review.
Follow us on Instagram and leave a comment about today's show.
Tweet us what topics you'd like to discuss in the future on Twitter.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Hit that little bell icon so you can get instant notifications so when our exclusive content releases, you're the first to hear about it.
We cannot wait to see you there.